This is our 702.8 hour review here. This instrument cluster isn't really all that user friendly. I don't really like how you have to program it with these 4 buttons. I would rather a screen, like a more of a cell phone screen. It'd be a lot nicer to use it. But you can lock your machine up with that and stuff, but it takes a minute to learn how to program it. You just have to read through the instruction manual 30 times to get it. This throttle, I don't mind it so much, but it does seem like it'd be nicer to have a knob instead of that big old huge, like one of these knobs right here, rather than this big huge knob for the throttle. We had to put the light switch right there, and a lot of times when you're turning on stuff, then it gets bumped and turns on your light bar when you don't need it to. But we put a couple of the light switches over here on this panel, so these turn on all the extra lights that we added. When you lower this bar, when you're sitting in your seat, a lot of times it won't register that you're sitting there. So it takes it a second. You have to scoot your butt around on the seat for a minute to see if so that it'll connect with the little button that turns it on, says you're in the seat. But sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to get it to recognize that you're on the seat. So you can't unlock the brakes until it does. The paint's still lasting on these buttons. We use these buttons on this side all the time for the snow blower and the auger and stuff. The paint's still good on them. It still smells new in here. It still smells like a new vehicle in here. The backup camera has this little glitch in it every once in a while, so when you're installing one of these, make sure you're grounded real good. I think that's the reason it is struggling. So that's one thing that we've dealt with, is that, and this radio antenna keeps getting broken off. Just right there, it gets broken really easy. It hooks on tree branches and different things that rip it off. We've been really careful to not hook the little rubber thing on the edge of our guard right here. Really paid attention to that, trying to not do that. So it's lasted pretty good, considering. So it's still got a little wear, but you can see right there, it gets wear right there. Something's rubbing on it, and we close it and open it all the time. The shields, the ram shields, the guards, they don't protect this area. We never did weld a little piece in there like we was going to keep the dirt and crap out of there. So you can see some little bit of dents down in there from it, from not shielding that dirt out of there. We tighten up the door, so you have to shut it quite hard, but it keeps the wind from blowing water in there in the blizzard storms when you're snow blowing and stuff. We added a few lights to it, so we've got a light right here, we've got a light right there to shine on the tracks. I dropped some pretty good sized rocks on top of this a while back. I was lifting up a pallet kind of high, and it had a couple of rocks in it. They came down and landed on this glass. I thought for sure it was going to break, but it actually didn't. Held up good. The seals on it doesn't leak, so they've lasted good up to this point. None of these seals leak at all, so that's nice and tight. If you're going to be using your machine in the snow, I highly recommend these tracks. We did stud these tracks. You can see the little holes in them, and it worked really good, but then they pushed in and now they're just kind of ruining the track more than they're helping at this point. But just have to keep putting them in every year. It's kind of expensive to stud them, but it'd go through some deep snow with it like that. Wouldn't even slide at all. But I'm impressed with them. They're holding up nicely. Just in comparison to our last machine, it is a similar weight. This one's probably barely heavier, but they lasted, the tires lasted about 700-800 hours and they were done. So the tracks are still that much tread with 700 hours, so they should last longer. They're way more money. As far as the paint right here, I'm quite impressed with the paint that they used for how much rocks and junk falls against these. It's held up quite well. Hasn't even gone through the primer in some places. The bucket's just down to primer. A lot of places hasn't even gone through the primer. I saw in one of the comments where somebody said that there's no visibility from behind you because the boom right here, there's hardly any room to see. But when you're backing up, if you just lift the bucket up a little bit, you can actually see pretty good down here. And in the dark, this light right here shines right on that spot. So that's pretty nice to have a light mounted right there. This one kind of takes out the dark shadow from the boom when you're lifted up in the air. So that shines on the ground when your boom's up. And we did rip the track. It fell off because we let it get too loose. So it came off, ripped about a 2 foot long by 2 inch wide chunk off of the track. It's probably on the bottom side right now, but anyway, it tore that. Originally, the I may have said it in my other video on my 300 hour, but its alternator went out before the 300 hours. It didn't even have very many hours on it when it went out. And then just recently, it's probably 650 hours, then we had the crankshaft sensor failed on it, and it was about $600, but it was under warranty, but the dealer made me pay up front. It's kind of weird. Made me pay the $600 up front, and then they repaired it, and then they reimbursed my $600 back. So kind of weird they did that, but anyway, so far it's been really good. The tracks have held up really well with that many hours on it. Still got about an inch deep of tread. Haven't had any problems with the wheels or any of that stuff. We've kept all their oils full. One thing that we do deal with quite regularly is right here. The track hits the boom quite regular when it's down and you're trying to grade. So sits there and bounces off it, but hasn't really just ruined anything. It just rubs it kind of odd. It's even got clear over there on the body and rubbed on that a couple of times. When it rubbed on the body, it's probably when the track actually fell off. That's probably what that is. It has a little bit of just a normal wear and tear, chipped paint and stuff right there. The paint is holding up pretty good. It has, I can tell it's kind of slightly fading. It's not too bad though. So the paint color's staying pretty good. The back actually looks a lot better than the front, because sometimes we pour concrete and splash it on, and then we spray it kind of hard with the pressure washer. So that area probably a little lighter than this back area. When we're pulling it down the road, it gets salt splattered all over it a lot too. That's partly why it's fading, I think. Having this wire on here is pretty nice. We did take it off a couple of times just so we could see how it was without it, I guess. But it was nice because you could hand drinks and stuff through the window if you need to, or whatever. But it gives you a little bit more visibility when it's not on there, but it ain't too bad. It's nice for security purposes. If somebody threw a rock at it, have a better chance of deflecting it. As far as the window wiper and stuff, I wish that it had a delay. That'd be pretty nice. When you're snow blowing, you don't want it going constantly, but it would be nice to have a delay on it. The doorknob and stuff, that's all working real good. The seal's still nice and tight. You can spray out the pressure washer and it doesn't leak. The seat has held up quite nicely. No holes or anything in it. No, not really any wear marks on it. Our last skid steer, these rubber biscuits would wear out really fast for some reason. These ones are still holding up good. The air conditioning still works good. The heater works good. Kind of an interesting spot for your window washer fluid, but it works. I was moving that big tree in that other video we did, and one of its branches came over there and just mashed that light in. But it held up surprisingly well. It was a big old branch. Sometimes the attachments are a real bugger to get them on there. The ones on the machine haven't worn out hardly at all, but the fittings on the attachments are always kind of weird. They get the pressure, a lot higher pressure, so they bend a little bit and then they don't want to go back on. It's one thing we fought with it a little bit, but the bucket has held up really well. We've moved a lot of dirt with it. Cutting edge is still in nice shape. Has a little bit of normal wear and tear on it, but one of the things to keep in mind when you're with your buckets is to not ever slam your bucket down on top of a rock, or it'll bulge the bottom up in. So if you just take care to not do that, then your bucket will last a long time. This has always kind of made me wonder, but it hasn't really worn out or anything, but the way these hoses always fold up, they kind of get in a weird position right there. Kind of folds it, looks like it kind of pinches it, but it hasn't really damaged anything. It just looks like it could. A couple of times we had a little bit of a slight leak, but it was only because of tightening. We just had to tighten it up on the hydraulic lines. We was working in a tight area and we was backed up into a bank, and I hit this door. So this bumper helped a lot, but it still kind of thumped on the cage, and it made the door just a little bit stiff to open. But it still works fine. It just gave it a little gunk, and you can't really even tell by looking at it, but it's a little tiny bit stiff when you open it. So that backup camera is really nice for that. We installed the backup camera after. Having plenty of lights on these things is a must-have for in the winter when you're snow blowing. Can't see very well, the days are short. It's really nice to have lots of lights. In comparison to a tire machine compared to the tracks, our last machine did have tires. and this thing will push probably twice the size of a mound of dirt as the other one. That's how much better traction it has. So there it is, 700 hours, still kicking. So my overall take on it, up to 700 hours, is it's a good machine. I would definitely buy another one. I don't like the idea of the crankshaft sensor going out very good, because those parts can get expensive if the crankshaft breaks. It can cost you 8 or 10 grand real easy. So it's a good thing it's on warranty, but other than that, I'm impressed with the machine.